competitive in to make you competitive in applying for the other programs, this is a perfect one. So the second bullet here, you see salary, travel, research supplies. Typically, you go to an institution that has a lot of infrastructure, you know, the R1s. You don't have to, but that's in R1s, you will find all the instrumentation that you would need. You have all the expertise, the people with expertise to run your experiments, your instruments. And I can tell you that the best way, if you have to contact someone in an R1 and you've already looked at their webpage and you already have some idea of what you want to do or what you want to learn even. Let's say you want to go there just to learn a technique. Then the best way to approach that person is to say, I heard there's a program at NSF called ROA, and I want to collaborate and work in your lab, and all the funding will come from NSF. Once they hear that they don't have to spend their own funding for you to host you, they will be more open to accepting you in the lab. So I usually recommend that to folks. And if you have problems, I can always request the host. So how do you make connections? Network scientific meetings. You might know someone that you really have, who can teach you techniques or teach you lab procedures or teach you how to run an instrument, or just doing your research in that lab, so you're guided by someone who does it on a daily basis. And when you apply back to NSF for your real grant to yourself, to your institution, now you can say, I went to this host lab or host institution through an ROA NSF award, and now I am ready to establish my own research program at Prairie View. And reviewers will recognize that and consider that a big plus on your part, that you took steps to go one step above until you reach the point where you can submit a proposal. Okay, let me do the next slide. There we go. So the HBCU Excellence in Research, HBCU EIR, actually got this proposal from one of the folks in the EIR group. And as I said, Carletta knows a lot more about this. It was, from what I was told, developed in response to a congressional mandate to increase support for research at HBCU. I can tell you it is a really good time for you to submit proposals to NSF. I believe that the HBCUs as a group of its own will get much more funding this year, this FY22, because the budget of NSF now being discussed at the Senate and the House is slated for an increase, the biggest increase that we are seeing in the history of NSF. So if you're gonna be aggressive about getting funding for your research, for yourself, for your institution, now is the time. You can't find a better time than now. So the EIR aims to accelerate supported research at HBCUs across all disciplines. EIR is not just bio, it's all the other directorates that I showed you. Research Initiation Award is a track in HBCU program. And Carletta really knows more about this. So I can either skip to the next, or Carletta, you can say something.
Pleased to engage either way.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sure. I wanted to thank you, Sally. I wanted to make sure that I did distinguish between HBCU Excellence in Research and the HBCU Up program. About 3 years ago when EIR first started, EIR was part of HBCU Up solicitation. Now it is distinctly different. HBCU EIR is its own program with its own solicitation, and now it is managed by our Office of Integrative Activities. While we do have HBCU Up program officers that sit on the agency-wide working group, I think it's important that I underscore that as well. And as Sally has mentioned, again, HBCU EIR is intended for all directorates across the agency. So whatever your research discipline is, you would certainly convey a research that is fundamentally research. It's not necessarily rooted in broadening participation, like many of the HBCU Up projects are. It is very, very much research oriented. And although certainly you would still have to speak to the 2 merit review criteria for those proposals, that being intellectual merit and broader impacts. But also for HBCU EIR, there is no budget stipulation or restriction, if you will, outlined in that solicitation. So it is incumbent upon the PI to identify a budget that is commensurate with the scope of work that you present in your proposal. Oftentimes we have PIs that are looking for some kind of restriction, and for EIR, that is not the case. You request what you believe is necessary to implement all facets of the proposal. That is very much different than the Research Initiation Awards for the HBCU Up program. So the Research Initiation Awards are specifically targeted for faculty members at HBCUs that have not received any external funding to support their research program within the last 3 years. So the Excellence in Research, if you've had funding from other sources or NSF, you are more competitive, and you will find yourself among a more competitive group of proposals within the Excellence in Research track. Research Initiation Awards, it is mostly junior faculty who are looking to initiate, as we've indicated in the track, a new research program, or more senior faculty who have been away from research for a set period of time, whether you had an administrative appointment or have been focused primarily in your teaching endeavors. If you have never received, or if you've never received external funding or have not received external funding in 3 years, the Research Initiation Award would be appropriate for you. Very much similar to EIR, it is based on the disciplines that represent the full gamut of the National Science Foundations and its research interest. So again, it's not restricted to any discipline at all. However, EHR proposals are reviewed in the discipline, in the research discipline at the agency. So even though OIA manages the program, your proposal, if you are engineering, for example, if you have engineering as a background, your proposal, if you're applying for HBCU EIR, will be sent to the engineering directorate within the into the program that most closely aligns with your research. The merit review process will be managed by a program officer within the engineering directorate, for example. For the HBCU Up research initiation track, that merit review process is managed within HBCU Up. So we identify a cadre of experts, whether it be from HBCUs or other institutions that have expertise and familiarity with understanding the unique research environment as afforded by our institutions. And so I'll pause there, but that is the primary way to distinguish between HBCU EIR and then the research initiation track specifically for HBCU Up. And as time permits, if there's any questions about any other track within the HBCU Up solicitation, I'm available to address those as well.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
So RUI, I get a lot of inquiries about RUI. Certainly, Prairie View is a predominantly undergraduate institution, and you can apply for RUI. RUI proposals are reviewed with all the other proposals submitted to that program. You're competing against the top 10, top 20 that get the most amount of money from NSF. And so it is expected that when you apply for an RUI, you already have done some preliminary experiments, you have preliminary data that you include in the proposal. If you don't have that, I mentioned to you, apply for an ROA, apply for the RIA. You know, there are other mechanisms that you can take advantage of and get yourself competitive. But this is certainly open to any faculty who believes that they have enough data to support whatever research is being proposed. In bio, we receive about 10% RUI proposals. Every time we make awards, we make sure that the awards, we also make awards to RUI and not just the R1 institution. The advantage of submitting an RUI is that you have an additional up to 5 pages of RUI impact statement. What do you do with that impact statement? You tout your the impact on your career as a faculty, on the impact on your department, the impact on your institution, and all of that you can put in the RUI impact statement. So essentially, you're able to bypass the 15-page limitation by putting some information in the RUI impact statement. Okay, career is one of our most prestigious awards. You have to be in a tenure track position. The proposal is an integration of research and education. So you're a teacher scholar is what we call it. You have to make sure that whatever research you're doing is integrated into some type of education outreach, preferably the actual class that you teach. The minimum funding is $500,000 across the foundation. And as I mentioned earlier, typically in bio, the amount is closer to 1 million over 5 years. You can collaborate with other folks, but the primary work must be done by you at your institution. So if there's a small segment in which you believe you're going to get stronger, you can pitch your proposal in a more competitive way, then you can say that you don't have as much expertise in that area and you will do it in collaboration with someone, and that will actually be a plus for your proposal. Always check the eligibility criteria, because you can only apply to this if you are in a tenure track but untenured. And sometimes they change the eligibility criteria, so you just have to keep watching. MRI I included here because, as you know, most disciplines will need instrumentation. We get very few proposals to bio, requests for instrumentation from HBCU. And if you think you need an instrument or you need to upgrade your instrument because it's no longer able to give you the kind of data that you need, apply for MRI. You are very competitive for MRI because we have very few proposals that we get from HBCUs. So MRI, there are 2 tracks. It's now determined by money. It didn't used to be. So if you're applying below $1 million, then you're track 1. And track 2 is much more competitive. And those are proposals between $1 million to $4 million. If your instrumentation is less than 100,000, you can also apply for instrumentation under MRI. That is allowed for predominantly undergraduate institutions. And again, probably the best way to learn how to write proposals, say to MRI or to a research program, is to see a sample proposal and have a workshop where we show you how to do this, how to prepare a competitive proposal. That's the end of my presentation. So I'll open it up and share. So you can ask any questions. Share, stop share. There we go. Oh, we grew. Thank you so much. I really intended it to be short, to be applicable to all disciplines, because I believe that with the set of programs that I presented to you, it probably applies to all of you. So Carletta and I will entertain questions. And my hope really is for one or more of you to apply, to send proposals to NSF.
Well, I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So when you presented the budget, this is total or direct?
So the budget has probably like 10 sections. The top section is salary,
Yeah.
and then French, travel, the research supplies is G. Participant, like if you want to include a student in your research proposal, that goes in F. So the budget from NSF is actually, I think it's easy to read. So your salary, you can ask for a technician, you can ask for, I'm not sure if you can ask for a graduate student, but if you believe that a graduate student can apply to your program, you can do that, or a postdoc. And I think your SRO office should be able to help you with developing
The question was, when you said, for instance, 300K for a particular proposal, this is a total budget or only the direct cost? So it includes also the indirect?
That's total.
That's total. Okay, this was the question.
Sorry.
Okay, and another question. I saw in the NSF instructions that normally the effort of the faculty is limited to 2 months a year.
Yes.
Is any possibility, if we are trying to open a new direction or establish a new laboratory, to extend the effort up to 3 months, or is not recommended?
It's not that it's recommended or not recommended. NSF gives guidance like, okay, we will accept up to 2 months, and that's a given. If you want to go beyond that, let's say 3 months, what you have to do is make sure you justify it well.
Okay.
Why is another month of support important?
Understand.
And if you say, yes, I need that because I need to relieve myself of teaching. And so in the summer, you'll be full-time for 2 months. And then during the academic year, you're going to give up one course to teach. Therefore, NSF needs to cover that course that you have to give up. So yes, there are guidelines, but that doesn't mean that's the limit. It's just guidance.
Okay, so I understand. Thank you. And one last question. There are some projects covering different fields. For instance, what I'm going to propose is primarily biology, but also engineering, math, physics. So in this case, I can submit to only one directorate, and mentioning that this will be of interest also for other directorates or not?
No, we determined that. So let me answer your question, because we have corresponded by email. Where your proposal eventually lands, it depends on the question you are trying to solve.
Okay.
Okay, so if you say, I want to determine the effect of, I believe you're doing radio.
Yeah, radiations
Radiation.
on
I
gene
want to
expression.
determine the effect of radiation on, let's say, just simplify it, on rats under this condition.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the question you want to do. That will likely land in bio. And even though for that particular project, you might use techniques in engineering, in computer science, there's computational aspect, in chemistry, we determine where it lands the best by the question that you ask.
Okay.
And we try to fit you into a panel that will be friendly to your idea. So we can't just place you in physics because you said, I want to distribute in physics, when we know it's going to be dead on arrival in the physics panel. So that's how we do it.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Just add to that point. I'm not sure which solicitation you're interested in applying to, but if the HBCU Excellence in Research is of interest, one of the requirements is that the PI identify the program. So there's the directorate, and then there's a division, and then in every division there's programs. PIs are expected to identify the program that they believe their research most closely aligns, and we asked PIs or potential PIs to do that very early in the process, so that when you do because it's part of the cover sheet on your final submission. I'm offering this as insight because this would be helpful in terms of establishing relationships with program officers and understanding the magnitude and the size, if you will, of the NSF to determine which programs are appropriate for your research interest. They're more than willing to kind of give you insight even prior to your proposal being submitted so that you know it's going to the right program.
Any other questions?
Karen, we can't hear you.
Oh.
However, I believe that one of the questions in the chat was, or is, how often does NSF collaborate with NIH or USDA to fund projects? How do we find such RFPs?
That's a really good question. So with respect to USDA, right? USDA is one of them, and NIH, both of them are very bio-focused. So we do collaborate with NIH on computational neuroscience. We have a program where we have a regular neuroscience. It could be cognitive, which is in social behavioral economic, or it could be cellular or molecular biology or neuroscience. And then there's the computational neuroscience. And that is a program that's actually funded by both NSF and NIH. Now, in certain instances, we also collaborate with NIH on instrumentation. So if you make a request for a big instrument, we would let NIH know that it has been reviewed and we're interested in funding it. And in the instances where we approach them, they actually have supported, given funding. So the funding comes from two sources. So that's NIH. The other areas of NIH is not as applicable to bio because it's very disease related. With USDA, we do have a partnership with USDA in our plant genomics program. And so you can look at the PGRP program in bio. You can apply to that. And quite often USDA will be there as well. So because USDA is more applied than NSF, So you can have a proposal that includes both fundamental research in plant genomics up to the applied component of your project. And that will, in other words, instead of sending a proposal to NSF for your fundamental research project, sending a proposal to USDA, you can actually do both in one proposal. And we take care to make sure that USDA knows about it. Most of these are internal, by the way. It's something that you can't really say, I want USDA to review this, and you're applying to NSF. The NSF program officer determines whether it's a good fit for USDA, and then they themselves will contact USDA. That's how it goes.
Thank you. There is another question. It is, can we go out of the USA under ROA?
The answer to that is yes. It is a matter of finding a host, at first a US institution, but your actual research could be done anywhere. And this is true for a field station, for example. It's usually not done in your lab, it's done out there in the field. You want to go to OTS, the Organization for Tropical Studies in La Salva. That's it's actually a US run field station. So you can do that, and whatever expenses you have at the site, we cover it for an ROA. So the answer is yes. It really depends though, because there are some countries that NSF is still very reluctant to send anyone. And so we go by whatever the US Department of State posts in their website. So if they say travel to X country is restricted, then we can't do anything about that. It is restricted.
Thank you. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put them either in the chat or you can unmute and ask the questions out loud.
So Dr. O'Connor, just to revisit the multiple agency question earlier. So if the FO or the RFP has multiple agencies listed as a host, like NSF, NIH, or USDA, or Department of Commerce, is that funding strictly from NSF, or do the different agencies all contribute money to the funding pot?
Yeah, that's a good question. They actually transfer the money to NSF. We have MOU agreements. We even have an MOU with Air Force, Department of Defense. It's an existing MOU, and so all the terms are already spelled out, and they simply transfer the money to NSF.
Thank you.
There are some people who just entered. Please feel free to ask any questions. At the beginning, Dr. O'Connor really encouraged questions. We will have the slides. I see that question. The slides will be posted on our YouTube channel. But please, any questions that you have regarding NSF, NSF funding, we have both Dr. Paige Anderson and Dr. O'Connor here to answer questions. As an instructor, I've worked on my wait time for a long time. So.
The other thing I should mention is that if you are interested in learning more about a program, the best way to do it is to volunteer as a reviewer, because you will learn a lot.
I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah, we're always looking for reviewers. Like for me, every time I do panels, I make sure that I have HBCU faculty included. Like I just finished 4 panels, and I probably have reps from maybe 4 HBCUs. Tribal colleges are difficult because they have heavy teaching load, and even though we try and invite them, sometimes it doesn't work. But our panels are very, very diverse. Gender-wise, we covered the expertise needed for that panel, but in terms of perspectives from different institutions, different even levels. So we don't pack our panels, we just full professors. We go from assistant to full, and we even invite administrators because that have been faculty before. So it really is a better decision for us to have a diverse panel.
And I know that there are several people on here that I've had personal conversations with about the RUI designation. Could you talk a little bit more about the impact statement? What kind of information NSF likes to see in that impact statement?
Oh, okay. So you have up to 5 pages. I think the first thing you need to do is what is the impact to yourself? So let's say you're an assistant professor or you're an associate professor that have been immersed in teaching the past 6 years, and now you want to go back and establish a more active research program. These are, that's the kind of story you want to tell in an impact statement. So that's what is the impact to you, to your career. And so in that statement, I think what reviewers want to see is, where do you see yourself 3 years, 5 years from now if you get this funding? Will you continue the research program? Will you engage your students in the program? And then the impact to your department, because it will have an impact on your department. And you can say, in our department, most faculty might be in teaching positions, and you are more interested as well in a research position, and what that research component in your lab how it will impact your department. And then finally, your institution, you can cite. So believe it or not, there are reviewers who don't know what HBCUs are, and you cannot assume that they know. You have to tell them. You should say peer review is an HBCU, and give a little bit of history, give the composition of your student body, the impact that you could make in changing the lives of your students to become holders of PhD, and maybe eventually become faculty as well. So all of those go into an impact statement. And you have 5 pages to do it. So you can put a lot in there. You can put graphs, you can put, So I think what you need to do is get some data from your institutional office and put it in there. And it could be quite convincing. So even if your research lands in the middle of the pack and you have a very strong RUI, you will get funded. So it makes a difference.
I was about to ask, what would be the impact on the success rate if you put RUI as a prefix? So you pretty much answered it.
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
You use RUI as a prefix in a proposal. I was wondering what impact it would have on the success rate. So you almost answered it, close to 50%.
Oh, okay. That's a good question. We had a program officer. So I don't know if you know, but program officers at NSF basically are 2 groups of people. One group are permanent. I'm one of them. And another group are rotators. And many rotators actually come from predominantly undergraduate institutions. We try and track them. So when you do RUI, we make sure in a panel that we instruct the panelists what RUI proposals are. Because the RUI proposals are mixed with the regular proposals that are not RUI. This way, they don't get biased. They don't think immediately, oh, this is a small institution, they're not going to be competitive. That's the last thing we want them to think about. What we want them to think about is remove that implicit bias and let them know that NSF really wants to support faculty at HBCUs. And so by having that RUI, it immediately alerts the program officer that that submission is coming from a smaller institution, that you have likely more teaching duties. You're not 100% research, more likely. And so what we want to do is have the panelists open their mind as to the, not just a possibility, but the opportunity needs to be open to all. And good science comes from all sources, not just the R1s. Although some people think that way, we know at NSF, it doesn't come from R1s. It comes from every sector of the academic community.
Thank you.
So Dr. O'Connor, quick question.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke about a session where you NSF would be willing to do a writing session, and you would show us a good proposal versus one that's not so good. Would you have we discussed that, Krish, in terms of, or Shonda or Kim, in terms of asking Dr. O'Connor to speak about, to do something for us at Prairie View?
Great question, Dr. Carson. We are definitely.
Right. We exchanged that idea through Teams. Somehow we should grab the earliest opportunity. Yes, we are going to get in touch with Dr. O'Connor later and see how it can be arranged to everyone's convenience at the earliest.
Yeah, because I know there are some proposals that's going to be due real soon, right?
Yeah. So it works best, Laura, it works best. Nice to see you, by the way, Laura.
You too. Well,
it works best if you have a little bit of an idea of what you want to do. It works best if the entire group is maybe capped at 20, so that more attention is given to each person. Maybe a bit more, but not 40. 40 is unwieldy. And it takes a little bit longer time to prepare. Like, I know when I told Shonda I'm willing to do this, even though I just finished a panel a few minutes ago, I knew I wanted to do it. And so, but if you want a workshop where we will teach you how to prepare a proposal, we have to identify what areas of research are you interested in? Is it bio? If it's chemistry, it's a totally different story.
okay.
But we can still connect you. If it's bio, it's easier because I'm in bio. We can put something together. We identify, we look for proposals, we scrub them clean. By that we mean, when you read the proposal, you cannot identify the institution or the person applying.
Right.
So
right.
we ask permission from whoever submitted the proposal if we can use it in a workshop.
Okay.
And usually those proposals were the ones submitted by people who are at NSF, whether they get declined or they got awarded. So it's easier for us. It's all like kind of internal. And we scrub them clean. We present it to you. You tell us, and then what we do is we do mock panels.
Okay.
So it's like a smaller group of maybe 6 or 8 people will read one proposal, discuss among yourselves what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are in intellectual merit, do the same for broader impacts. And really it's a teaching venue, because we are there to tell you how an actual panel viewed that proposal.
Okay.
So it's helpful that way.
Yeah.
And we go from page 1 up to the end. In other words, even the budget, we go over it. your CV, I mean, all of the stuff that you need to do to submit a proposal. It does take time because I don't know if we have scrub proposals ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But your first job will be to identify what discipline, and maybe, if it's in biology, I'd say we have 3 main divisions that do research. The cell and molecular. So if you say, oh, we were interested in cell and molecular, we can easily do that. Or you're interested in ecology, or you're interested in organismal biology. It could be a mix, like you can have a group of, let's say, 15 or 20 workshop participants, and that you're all interested in bio. And it could be a mix of molecular, organismal, or ecology. But if we know ahead of time, we know what scrub proposal to pull and use as an example.
Mm-hmm. And so this is not really a question for everybody on the call. I know Dr. O'Connor because she was at NSF and she funded one of my first NSF funded proposals. She actually came to Prairie View and visited the campus to make sure we had the facility to do it. And so I credit her a lot for giving me that opportunity. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we never forget.
We never forget.